Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined by our amazing Marshall Goldsmith certified coach. He's here today to talk more about leadership and all that he does to help so many people bring freedom to potential. Randy, welcome back. How are you today, darling?
Thanks. I'm glad to be back and doing good. And glad to be here with you as always.
Same here, sweetheart. A little introduction about you, what you've been up to, what you do. I know it's a lot. We can take a few shows to conquer that, but just an overview.
Yeah. I'll just do about a 30-second thing. But obviously, like you said, my background in my career has been in jet flying, military and civilian, but also military concepts and everything. And I've also been training jet pilots and certifying jet pilots and certifying instructors for about the last 26 years. But I'm also, as you mentioned correctly, I'm also a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach. So I bring the coaching leadership aspects of it and the development aspects to it. And I'm also a certified master level neuroplastician with the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience in Germany. And what that is, understanding the neuroscience, that also is what, makes people aware of how your brain is either getting in the way or how it's really not, and it's really getting you where you need to be. And then the only other thing that I'll mention, because we just shared this with a couple of people that asked, but I'm also, I have a concept that's trademarked for me out of Washington, which is called organizational maneuverability. And guess what? Where I bring a lot of this stuff is to that concept, because you know what? Organizational maneuverability is when not everything fits rote academic standards. And guess what? In today's world, in a lot of ways, your team, your company, and all that, guess what? You'll have unexpected factors that sneak on scene that you didn't expect. And can you lead your team, and can you and your team truly reach radical success when those things are happening? So that's just a brief introduction of a lot of sort of what I bring.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. And what do you have for us today? Fill us in about the topic that we're going to get started on.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you real quick, and then when you say, okay, go for it, I'll start kind of thing. But it's very, what I'm going to bring today is a very simple and deeper and centered aspect about true leadership that sometimes people don't think. But I'm also going to bring out one aspect that came up in a aviation training, just one incident kind of thing, not anything bad, nothing. No airplane was going to crash or anything like that kind of thing.
Aww.
But just from the person who was teaching, needed to understand something a little bit differently and things of that nature. And so I'll bring that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention it and mention some of the aspects about it that true leaders have to be aware of to truly understand the right and the real situational awareness and make the right decisions so that the right success can happen. And so that's just going to be where I sort of take this. It's a little bit insidious. It's a little bit sort of hidden when a lot of people, if there's a lot of people that might see something like it out in the industry there or out in their world and not even be aware of it. So it, just calls attention to it. And we'll just mention a couple of aspects with it.
Perfect. Let's get started.
Sounds good. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do that. And the first thing that I will do is I will simply highlight the insight from the aviation community. And there was actually this week, and because I was aware of it, there was a written test that I saw that had a particular question on it. And I'll say in jet pilots, when you look at pilots that are flying jets, there's something that is typically referred to as memory items in the checklist. And what memory items are, where the client has to memorize those verbatim without reference to anything, so that in the heat of challenge or some kind of a thing in airborne, they can do the right steps in the right sequence without thinking about it too much. And that's called memory items. Well, a number of airplanes, some of the older airplanes have done away with the memory items, and they go back to something referred to as basically immediate action items. Uh, and what they are is they're not memory items. You don't have to know them from memory, but in the checklist, they're typically in a gray area kind of thing. And what you have to do is you sort of have to do those in the sequence that they are, but you have to do them, but it doesn't have to be from memory without referencing to anything. But what was amazing on this test is there was one question, and I called attention to the question and strongly recommended to the lady that was the one that had created it that she needed to rethink kind of how she wanted to do this.
Okay.
And because the one question was simply this, it said, what is the, what is the third step in immediate action items and critical action items? And that is kind of weird. Now, what she was wanting to do and where she was wanting to take this was not wrong necessarily in her opinion. But when you went into the flight manual and the documentation and everything, there's a list of priority things that it said it wanted to do on all the checklist items, and the third step was something, and that's what she was asking about. But if you think about the pilots that are out there doing it, in the way the question was written, the question suggested, okay, what's the third step in the critical action items? Well, guess what? All of those critical action items would have slightly different steps as the third step because
Okay.
the challenge was a little bit different. And what I will tell you is simply this: my neuroscience processing and awareness from the coaching perspective and everything understood the risk there. And I brought it out to her, and she didn't fully understand kind of the reality of what I was talking about because she was just going to that little first point at the beginning there and going to that third thing. But you know what? The question was not deliberate on that. The question almost made it sound like what's the third step in all those checklist procedures kind of thing and everything. And I brought it up to her, and by the way, I'm not bad mouthing her at all. She's somebody that I've worked with and we work together and stuff like that. So I'm not bad mouthing. And by the way, I'm not going to tell you the program. I'm not going to tell you my name or her name or anything like that kind of thing. But the bottom line is I brought it up to her. I said, you have to reword this question. You have to reword this question so that it takes them to exactly what you want them to answer. And the way that you had it worded, she said, what's the third step in the critical action items? Well, guess what? That takes you to the steps there. It doesn't take you to sort of the general, you know, tablet kind of stuff and everything. And I said, so you need to, make that question more where they are clear on what you're wanting to get answered. And part of this is the neuroscience awareness of it and understanding how the brain can go and get confused in the way that you have it worded and stuff. And guess what? As leaders, we can ask questions that confuse people. And we're sitting there going, I asked this question, but you know what? The way you worded it or the way that it came across was not overly clear on what you were trying to get. And so that's one thing that I was just kind of bringing up to her. And I don't think she totally saw what I was talking about initially, and may not have yet. Who knows? Like I said, nothing vindictive, nothing hateful, nothing bad mouthing or anything like that. It is something that you got to be aware of. And if you think about when you're talking about true leadership, it's not just about going with rote academics that you want to get them to tell you. If that's your focus, you're not getting the job done and you're not being a leader. When you're talking about leading teams, what you want to do is get a very sense of their their processing ability, the mental thing, how they're thinking, how they're determining this, how they're really getting this out, and what are they coming to as the real, success factors, and what's the real answer, perhaps, to the question that you're really trying to get, and things of that nature. And this is a lot deeper. When you're the leader, if all you're trying to do is to get them to just kind of walk through and give you answers that you want, you're not truly being a leader, because a leader looks to really get them. And it's not just telling them why what they gave you was wrong. No, it's giving it a sense where they see the processing aspect, and they see, oh, okay, here's where we're going to go on that, or whatever. And so it's just something to think about, that there are some insidious things when you're a leader. There are some insidious things that get in the way sometimes that you don't even think about. And you know what? If you have no understanding of the brain and how it truly works, or how it gets in the work, as a leader, are you aware of what your team's brain is doing? And to the extent that it isn't, because if you asked a question that was not overly clear on exactly what you were trying to get out of it, what do you see in them, in what they're coming up with? Because a lot of people in our world are just trying to give you a rote academic answer, whether they agree with it or not, and that's not exactly what you want. But as a leader, it's just a very insidious and very central, deep down thing that we have to be aware of sometime. If we're looking to try to find their wisdom on a particular situation, in a challenging situation, perhaps, if we're looking to see what their wisdom is, the questions may not be superficial, that just give you superficial surface answers, but it's getting their processing going so that they come out with amazing answers that maybe somebody else didn't even realize, and stuff like that. So it's just a concept that when you're talking about this aspect of leading teams, and again, I'm not bad mouthing this lady. I'll be happy to work with her and stuff like that. No, nothing wrong with that. But it's just something that a lot of people don't realize. It's just not filling superficial answers. And what happened is, if you look at the way the question was asked, it wasn't totally clear which answer they were going for. And so, as a leader, are you asking the questions right, so that their processing and their awareness and their thinking is going to go right where you want it to, not just because you're going to fail them if they don't give you the answer you want, kind of thing. And so it's just something to think about on that. And when you're talking about, like I said, when you're talking about leading your team, and particularly when you're trying to prepare your team and lead it in a way that they're going to be developed, so that when the totally unexpected factors come on scene that you would have never figured, you guys can still win the game. You guys can still reach radical success that makes your CEOs go, wow, wow, yeah, kind of thing. And that happens with the way this processing works and the way the mental awareness goes. And but the bottom line is, like I said, if you're looking for something like that, that's just one little example from kind of the aviation community and stuff. But it's just one little example of, as a leader, are you asking questions right, truly right? And what is your real result out of this? And if you're looking for a certain answer to see if they have the knowledge of it, are you asking the question in such a way that it doesn't just go with what you think about it, but the question is typically going to get them to give you the answer that you were looking for, kind of thing on that. And so those kind of things, when you're talking about subtle, very insidious ways of leading your team and preparing your team, and working together with them in a synergistic oneness, That can be a lot deeper and a lot more insidious than most people realize. If all you're doing with going through rote superficial things and expecting them to just give you the answer that you want, that's not what's going to get your team there. And it's not you being a leadership. If they get a sense of, wow, that question's different now. Yeah, here's what the answer should be on that. And you look at them and you go, yep, there you go, buddy. You got it. Guess what? Now they feel synergistic with you and they want to be a part of your team kind of thing. And but if you're kind of confusing about it and just being rotely academic and you're just saying, okay, just give me what I want. I'll just give you whatever question and you just give me what I want. If that's kind of what it's coming across as, guess what? Your people don't feel the same way. And so it's just something to think about when you're talking about leading your team, getting ready to be um, really successful, where the team is truly aligned and they are aware of certain uh, 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 systems aspects of it. And guess what? This is another part about this where, as a leader, if you're asking the right question and it's worded correctly, guess what? All of this relates to true situational awareness. And so, if you're doing that in a way where your
Um,
team feels real situational awareness and they go, oh, okay, boy, yeah, here, this is it, and you kind of go, yeah, there you go, kind of thing. All of that is just a key part of this. Like I say, this is really a more central, deeper down, you know, sort of gut level, if you will, insight. But if you understand how the brain works and how it can be confusing things,
mm-hmm.
and are you asking the right questions that are
Or
looking to get what you want, where it's not something different, kind of thing. Um, and it, and in fact, one of the things I would have changed on that question, instead of saying, what's the third step in this, I would have said, when you look at the overall immediate action items, what's the general third concept required with it? That might get you there, something like that. But nine times with many pilots, if you sit there and say, "What's the third step?" They're going to be going to the checklist and looking at every one of them, and they're going to be amazed because they're all different, huh? This kind of thing. And so, when you're talking about leading your team and looking to grow your team and help them to experience it and stuff, guess what? That aspect of it is so key. That how are you doing that when you're asking questions, either verbally or on paper on a test? Are you asking the questions right that is going to truly get you where you need to be, and those kind of things? And that's just something that, like I said, all of that relates to true synergistic oneness in the team, but it also relates to true situational awareness. Because if their mental processing is such that they understand what you're really focusing on with that question or whatever, guess what? They can give you the right answer. And so all of those kind of things, it's a very subtle and, like I said, a very sort of insidious aspect that came from something that I observed this week. And but when you're talking about that, you want to be careful as a leader. You want to be careful to make sure that you're asking the questions right, creating the situation right, where your people are going to reach the results that they need and the answers that they need, and things of that nature. So just a subtle thing. As a leader, you got to be aware of that. If you're just going with superficial academic things, you're not getting the job done, and you're not really being a good leader. You may be a control freak, kind of person, a manager or whatever, but you're not truly being a leader unless you really bring this into play as part of what you're doing. And so just something to think about on that. It's like I said, it's a more insidious aspect of it, but it's something that true leaders need to kind of think about and look at. And for anybody that is listening to this show, I'll say, what do you need to do different going forward?
Yeah.
What do you need to be thinking about going forward so you can maximize this aspect in what you're doing and in your team? And
Hmm.
so it's just something to think about. Like I said, more insidious, more central, but also very important for people to think about.
Nice. And you always have amazing insight to teams, to leadership, clearly with your work as a pilot, with your work as a coach. And it's kind of instinctively what you do. Probably you were born out of the womb and started this. When you were little, though, were you unique? Like, did your family know that you had this gift, this talent? A lot of us are born with certain things.
Yeah.
Some of us are born leaders, some are not, but some can learn to become leaders. But were one of those that were probably born this way, right?
Well, I tell you what, I think I was created this way in my journey.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I learned it and in my autobiography and also the Hollywood movie, that documentary that Hollywood has created about my lifelong journey that's coming out there. And I may have shared this with you before, but they're going to make it available to the public in December 14th and stuff. And so people can purchase and watch the movie. But a lot of it, and I've sort of shared it, I'll just kind of hit it very quickly. There were a lot of times in my life where I realized that things were not good
Yeah.
and I had to kind of make some changes and I had to visualize and envision what I really wanted. And the fact that my career was in the military flying and all that I've done, and plus when uh, when I was with the 335th Chiefs, at the time, Colonel Richard Myers, who became
Wow.
General Richard Myers, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the very first
Mm-hmm.
one in the Air Force in 2001. But he was a squadron commander, and I flew with him a number of times, um, and I learned an awful lot about that. I think I've said this before, but I learned a whole lot about leadership, not from anything he ever told me, but from what I observed him do and interact. And what I did is when I observed the real process and the real positive aspects of it, I applied those to my life as I grew. And so it's been the journey has truly brought me to where I am. And I'm not bragging on myself because guess what? I had most of my
Mm-hmm.
life, I had wanted to and had to get better and keep improving and all that kind of stuff. And I'm glad to have done that. It's so yeah, it's with where I am now. You know, I don't care. You've heard me say this before, but I don't mind if people 20 years after I take my last breath, if they don't remember my name, that's okay. But what I hope is that 20 years after I take my last breath or more, that there's a bunch of people that realize that there was this guy 20 years ago that, boy, he brought this insight and I brought it to my life and boy, it made a difference. And you know what? If that's the case, then I'm going to be rejoicing after I take my last breath and stuff. So it's just something that is key on that. It's been a journey of overcoming for me in my life because of a lot of that sort of stuff. But it's if you think about it, that's what true leadership is. How do you really overcome with yourself? And that it doesn't mean just playing control freak games. It means really becoming. And also, how do you do it in such a way that your team truly wants to follow you and to make those changes with themselves too? And that is huge. And that's a little bit of an alignment with kind of what I talked about today, just a small alignment, but it's been an amazing journey. Like I say, the Hollywood movie is almost out there for the public. And of course, the autobiography is out there too. So both of them about my story and everything. So it's been um, it's been a adventurous journey. Uh, it's been one that just makes you go. And I don't mean just bragging about me, because guess what? I didn't do everything perfect in my life. But I'll tell you what, with what all I learned and what I became, wow. And and there were a lot of times in the about 25, 30 years ago that a lot of people shared with me what they were experiencing with me.
Yeah.
And it made me go, oh, wow. Yeah, in my mind. Because it's like, you know what? That's what I need to become. and do. Cool. And it meant that my journey developed me into that going forward, and it kept going forward as we go forward. So it's just something to think on that, but just part of the story. And you know what? As a leader, are you really helping your team to be able to do that?
Gotcha.
And so that's just something to think about on that.
Thank you so much. And how can we contact you?
Okay, well, as you know, you can go to my website, coachingforrelevance.com. And at the very bottom of the website, it has my email on there, and it has my cell phone number. And if somebody wants to contact me, you feel free to reach out. As you've heard me say before, Jill, I don't do sales pitches, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you got something that you want, yeah, we'll come up with something. But if you just want to have a chat,
yes,
we can do that. And so, but you can go down to the bottom of my website, and it has the contact information on there. And I welcome anybody to contact me if they need to.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Randy. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat again next week. And thank you for always being so insightful. And happy almost fall. When does fall start for Texas?
Well, I think it's getting clear. Getting pretty close. I got to find out about that. I'm not real sure. I'll have to go look. But yeah,
all right. Good to know.
Getting close. Of course,
thank you.
The fall in Texas just means the temperature's down 10 degrees. So it's like
it's still 80. All right. Thank you so much, Randy. Bye-bye, sweetheart. Thanks.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.